afternoon. I, on behalf of Tibet Museum City, would like to welcome you all on today's talk series. We are glad to have you all here with us today. As some of you might be aware that Tibet Museum conducts Tibet Awareness Talk Series twice a month in order to raise awareness about Tibet and its current situation by inviting researchers, scholars, and other Tibet experts. Therefore, anyone who would like to join are always welcome. Well, on today's talk series, we have invited Dr. Rinzin Dorjee, who is currently a research fellow in Tibet Policy Institute under CTA. And today he'll deliver a talk on China's urbanization in Tibet, Boon or bane. And before he starts, I would firstly like to give a brief introduction of Mr. Rinzin. Mr. Rinzin did his MA in Political Science from Madras Christian College in Chennai. He served as a PGD teacher for 2 years at TCB School, Gopalpur, from 2005 to 7. And in year 2008, he obtained an MPhil degree in South and Southeast Asian Studies from University of Madras and continued for PhD program at Department of Politics and Public Administration of Tibetan Government in Exile. He is currently a research fellow at Tibet Policy Institute, researching on the impacts of infrastructure development in Tibet under People's Republic of China. Now with this, I'll conclude and I would like to request Mr. Rinzin to come up here.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to say thank to the Tibet Museum for calling me here and giving me opportunity to present. I think this is my third time coming here. So I really don't know how much you all know about the Tibet issues and the ongoing China's policy in Tibet, but I assumed seeing the exhibition date over here, you might have some idea about what Tibet is and what political situations going inside Tibet and how the China's policies are implemented to try to control over the Tibetan plateaus. So my job or responsibility at Tibet Policy is to research on the broader infrastructure and development that are going on Tibetan plateau. And I try to divide my research area. I initiated this area with the infrastructure, transport infrastructures like railway lines, airports, highways, how this impacts to the Tibetan peoples, because the Chinese propagandists claim that they have developed Tibet and Tibetans are satisfied under the Chinese government and their economies are booming every year. So I try to assess and analyze the impacts of these infrastructure development. So the second part of my research area is the China's urbanization in Tibet. So my presentation is based on a paper that I have recently published in the online journal, The Diplomat. So as I put here on the title, it is a hypothetical statement whether the China's urbanization in Tibet is a boon or a bane, right? So I don't know whether, I'm not sure at the end of my presentation whether you can decide whether it's a boon or bane. So first I'll go with the background of urbanization in China. If you look at the news, current news in China, China is now rapidly urbanizing every part of the Chinese territory. If you look at the rate of urbanizations, by 2020, the China has projected 60% of its rate of urbanizations. And then it also shows that from 2013, the rate of urbanites who hold household registrations, in Chinese they call hukou. So the rate of hukou's holders has projected rate is 45% by 2020. So which means it implies that the 100 million migrant people will move from different remote area to the towns and cities in China. And of course, it includes the various Western, so-called the Western Western regions like Tibet, Xinjiang, which is also called the Yukon or East Turkestan, and then the Inner Mongolia, which is under the Chinese control. So, when we come to urbanization in Tibet, the projected rate of urbanization is 25.7%, and it is expected to exceed 30% by 2020. So China is pushing so rapidly this time because, as you know, so far the China sustaining its GDP high rate, it's mostly because based on the export-oriented economy, because China is exporting all its product, right, made in China to the different countries. Now we all must be aware about its OBOR project, One Belt, One Road. They're trying to revitalize the old Silk Route, right? So now because of its what do you call, not stable economy, it is not able to sustain its its economic stability. So now they're trying to change their economic policy by urbanizing various parts of China, so that most of the products that are produced in China and various parts of China can be consumed by its populations, because China is a billion numbers of population, so that they're trying to reform their economic policy. So as a result, the China is in last few years pushing more on the urbanizations. And in Tibet, if you look at the Xinhua News, which is the Chinese mouthpiece, says that by 2013 there will be 140 cities. And in China and Tibet, they categorize cities into various levels or tiers, like highest is the prefecture, then counties level. So as of now, by 2016, in Tibet, there are prefecture cities like Lhasa, Shigaze, Lhoka, Nyingtis, which are part of so-called the Tibet Autonomous Regions, and then Siling, Siling in the Gansu province, Tibet Autonomous Prefecture, and Sosha in the, so they changed the Amdo into Qinghai, so now it comes under the Qinghai provinces, and then Chamdo. And within a few years, they're also trying to upgrade this Nakchu and Ngari as a prefecture cities. I don't know how this Mao and Deng so came in this maybe typo. But then one of the major impact of urbanization is the influx of Chinese migrant into the Tibet, because the Tibetan territory is 3.2 million square kilometers. It's a huge. I think you can combine several countries of Europe, and the same size of Tibet has got. But the population is only 6 million. So the China saw the Tibet as a destination to send its migrant, and so that the Chinese can settle and they can solve their overpopulation's problem. So that is a result that China has looked upon Tibet as a destination to send its migrant people. But then the huge large-scale migrant did not start until 1992, because till 1992, China had restricted individual Chinese to enter into Tibet. But after 1992, they uplift these restrictions. So now the day any individuals, any businessmen, any pilgrims can go and enter into China at any time. So that's why the Chinese migrants are increasing every year. So another major impact of Chinese migrant is that recently there was a change in the household registration systems, which I have mentioned before, hukou systems. They halted these changes for a long time, and there was a lot of debate and discussion about, and people protest about, because if you are in China, like Shanghai or Beijing, the people coming from rural, living in Shanghai or Beijing for last 10, 20 years, still you cannot apply for local registrations. You cannot shift or change your household registration in Shanghai. That means if you don't have household registration, you cannot enjoy the welfare benefit like education, sending your children to education or any other government subsidiaries or whatever, and even the health also facilities. So now recently they have changed this policy. They encourage more people, rural and towns, to migrate to cities. So they have now opened the door for migrant people to move into the various cities. So as a result, many Chinese has now migrated to Tibetan Plateau because China is investing huge sum of money in various infrastructures, like have you ever seen the longest bridge or the highest bridge, and then the highways and airport and tourism. So a lot of Chinese migrant workers are moving into these areas. And one issue is the Western Region Development Office of State Council of China. State Council is the cabinet of Chinese government. They have said that no government authority should collect urban surcharge fees, which means if you shift your household registration from China to Tibet, the government will not, normally they charge fees, and now this time they are not charging fees, so that more and more people can migrate towards on the Tibetan plateaus. And then out of China's 31 provinces, region and municipalities, Tibet Autonomous Region, so-called Tibet Autonomous Region, still maintain the distinction between the rural residents and urban residents, which means the Tibetans from rural migrating into Tibetan cities, they cannot change their household registrations. But the Chinese coming from mainland China to Tibet, they can change their household. So this is a clear distinction and discriminations. And this morning I saw this very interesting book written by John Pablo Catino and Herbildo Arrojoa. The title of the book is China's Silent Armies. And it is, I think, he is a journalist and he had done investigative research on this topic. So, and he says that there are 750,000 official Chinese immigrants in Africa, and especially in the retail business, which were setting up shops in all urban hubs concurring these sectors. Until recently, it was generally dominated by local African peoples. So he says indigenous workers and projects in most cases are victim to because they are badly paid, work in the dangerous conditions, and not given training by Chinese contractor. And the extractive industry employ few locals, Africans, only in menial positions. It works very much like classical colonialism. That is his critical remarks on his studies. So this is happening in foreign countries, what China is doing in a foreign country like Africa. So now Tibet is politically controlled and occupied by China. So, same thing is still happening in Tibet. Though they have invested a lot of money in infrastructures, but they never hire local Tibetans. They bring their Chinese migrants from mainland China. Even if they give some jobs to Tibetan local people, they give menial, ordinary jobs which need to be paid very less. And China also claimed that the Tibet is the most poverty region and it needs to be developed. So that's why they are putting a lot of money on that. But if you look at these two maps, the poverty densities in China is more in the inland or mainland China, not in the Tibetan western regions. You see, there's the red bar. These red bars are called Western Region Development, which include Tibet and Xinjiang and Inner Mongolia. But poverty density is more in that side. That is the mainland China's. And it is a very natural in everywhere that rural people migrating towards the Tibet, to cities because of the pull and push factors. So Tibetans, ordinaries, are also attracted by the glittering lives of cities. So many Tibetans are voluntarily migrating to various cities in Tibet, and they live their ancestral livelihood of herding animals like goat and sheep. And then with great hope they left their hometown, but at the end they become unemployed because they are not fit to anyone. They doesn't know Chinese language, and most of the Chinese restaurants don't hire Tibetan people. So at the end they become unemployment. And then their lands were bought by the Chinese, and later they were sold to the foreign companies to build in various industries. There are a lot of protests going on these days in Tibet that their agricultural lands are expropriated or taken away by the Chinese government. And that is voluntary part. And the second resettlement from rural to urban is the forced resettlement. Now China has a project for a long time that Tibetan nomads and pastorals should move to cities, and they should live in a compact house, in a cement house. Because one reason why they want to do that, for pastoral and nomad, they are very difficult to monitor their movement. Right? They listen to the Radio Free Asia, they listen to the Voice of America, they listen to the news and views from outside Tibet, what is happening outside Tibet, what is happening in the world, what are the burning international news. So they keep on updating. So that's why they are not able to monitor. So that's why to put them into fence and monitor, and under the CCTV, they build in a different name. They call it, sometimes they call it socialist village or paradise village or ecological resettlement, giving different reason. Many rural Tibetans are moved into city. Can I request, please come in if you want to join in. If you want to sit, you can sit here. So this is a website I've given you, Rukor, and he is an Australian environmentalist on Tibetan plateau. So this, if you go through this website, it's a very interesting articles and books and informations. And this picture is one image of the nomad resettlements, and these are concrete buildings built by the Chinese. And when they build this, half the money they have to spend from their own pocket, and half because the government gives the loan to the Tibetan people. So through these urbanizations, many rural Tibetans or Chinese become landless over the years, and they are sometimes legally or sometimes illegally also. So according to one statistic of the official statistic of Chinese government, 3 million people become landless farmers every year in China, and the total number is expected to double by 2020s. I'll give you two cases of forced resettlement. One is a village called Diki village, which comes under the Namseling area of Danang County, Hoka Prefecture in Tibet Autonomous Regions. Here, at this side, you will see the number of animals, yak and cattle. Before resettlement, they have, in Danang County, they have 1,320, and after resettlement, they can keep only 255. The same like the others, and donkey, horse, and sheep. And this survey was conducted by the Mcleod Ganj and Gombotashi in Tibet itself. So they have concluded their research that there were inadequate consultation with the local stakeholders, and begin to see poverty rise and cultural tradition deteriorate and ecological damage also. And the second case is in Dharamsala, Tsamchu Samba village, where Teshi Nima from Oslo University, Norway, has conducted a field research in which he has concluded that Tibet, though there are a lot of opportunities for the local peoples when they bring a lot of development, but then they make the Chinese government makes the local Tibetans to depend more on the government. In an interview, a village elder have stated that we are not prepared to go from our ancestral home and live together in the new apartment blocks, but what could we do? He asked questions. what we could we ordinary people do. We did not have any choice but have to follow what came from the top. The government had promised that everything would be provided once we had moved, and we would then be living in a paradise. And this is just 5 days before. In Radio Free Asia, there is a Tibetan nomad force from resettlement out to make way for development. And this is an interesting, or what you say, different perspective. Earlier, as I mentioned before, they are forcefully moving Tibetans from rural to urban, or nomadic land to urban areas. Now, in this case, they are forcing them to return to their grazing land, where they came from. Because they said that the place where they are living now, they are going to build houses for Chinese migrant workers, and it was good for the tourism, because the place is very beautiful and they have a beautiful natural scenic around these places. So the Chinese government decided to build various infrastructure in that place. So the Chinese government has given notice them to move back to where they came from. So this is what is happening. And another argument that I put forward is that Chinese try to move Tibetan from rural to cities because they can monitor through grid management systems. So this is a beautiful picture. I got it from Human Rights Watch, and there are different propaganda terminologies they used and giving instructions to their local officials. Like, if you see at the right side, catch incidents early, because they don't want to see protests. Catch them when they are small, or catch them quickly, or catch them completely. So this is an instruction given in Chinese to the Tibetan local officials in Tibet, so that they can prevent protests in Tibet. This is another picture from the same website. China have recently introduced a new monitoring system called comprehensive rectifications. If you look at the image, a person is monitored from different angles. I have missed the CCTV over here, another CCTV over here, and there are police, and there are civil men, and then there are checkposts. Everyone is looking at you. But one thing has changed in last few decades. Earlier, the physical presence of Chinese surveillance are more visible. But this day, recently, a week before, an Indian professor from US has visited to Tibet, and he has observed that there are more cameras and less military force or physical presence to monitor the Tibetan people in cities and areas. So when Chinese government cannot put monitoring system in village areas, it is difficult, because the nomads people and the pastoral, they have to run after their animals, right, on the mountains and everywhere. But if you put into a concrete building in a house, then they can monitor easily. So that's why my argument is that Chinese urbanization is for that purpose. So we don't have much time. I will try to please. So another impact is, because of urbanizations, there is a huge expropriation of land, or taking away of the land. The World Bank Development Research Center of the State Council of China 2014 report says that in China, the rural land requisition and conversion for industrial use has been particularly inefficient, because it has been largely driven by administrative decisions. Right. It is natural to everywhere that when the land is required for building or for converting it to urban infrastructures, then, but in Tibet or in China, in many areas in China, it is completely decision taken by the government itself, not on the basis of economic demand. And then there's another research finding by the Chinese person called Zhao, and in his article, How to Address the Problem of Land Loss Farmers, renaming Renming Wang. And he says that 3 million people become land loss farmer every year in China. And this number is doubled by 2020. And you can see the population official statistic and plan for Lhasa from 19 to 2005. 2015 is missing. The area of the urban land covers in Lhasa, which is the capital of Tibet. And another argument is, I think this will be last. Early this year, the Chinese has tried to upgrade many county level cities to prefecture level cities. So I was asking question why they are doing that. So when I saw this book, The Taming Tibet by Emilia, who conducted extensive research in Tibet, and she has found that if these cities are upgraded, then there is a chances of losing the autonomous status. As of now, according to Chinese national regional autonomous law, Tibetans are given autonomous status. But in reality, it's a different picture. But still then, she says that legally and on paper also, if these cities are upgraded to prefecture, then more Chinese are coming. Because Tibetan areas and other western regions are minorities areas, are minority cities. And recently, and another person, very eminent person, Tibetan, who is a strong believer of socialists and Marxism, and whose name is Bao Phunzo Wangke. And he was the person who was the interpreter when Chinese first came into Tibet. And later he was arrested and put into jail for, I think, nearly 18 years. And he has written about a book on a question of Tibetan nationalities, in which he says that this Tibetan city should represent and symbolize the Tibetan national minorities. But if you go into Tibetan cities, you will find more Chinese than Tibetans, right? So same case. There's another book by Rinzin Dorjee, a Mongolian anthropologist, and he also says that in Mongolia, Inner Mongolia also the same case is happening. And this is the paper that I published in the Development. So I'll end here. If you have any questions, or I'll try to answer. Thank you.
The Chinese people, not the government, the Chinese people, what they think about it, about this whole thing.
Organizations?
Yeah.
The Chinese, those who come to Tibet, like migrant workers and business people and miners, they obviously, it's for their own belly, right? For their economic interests. So they see it as an opportunity to move to Tibet and make money. There is a saying in the mining case in Tibet, because Tibet has a rich resources and mines. And there is a saying in one village that Chinese come as a beggar in the morning, and when they return on a horse like a billionaire, which means they extract a lot of minings in Tibet. But Chinese from mainland China has the image of Tibet that is shown by the Chinese government. Very beautiful place, peaceful place, right? But they are barbarians, so we have to civilize them. But Chinese dissidents outside China, when they move to US or those, so they have a different views. When they understand the real issue of Tibet, and then they understand the real political issues and how the Chinese government treat the Tibetans, and how the exile administrations try to resolve the Tibet issue through the dialogue. But they have a different, I think, understanding. But most of the Chinese in China, I think they are rather indifferent, or they have a whatever picture shown by the government.
I find it somewhat surprising in the 21st century with the extent of sort of the communication that's possible on the internet, that it's still possible for the Chinese authorities to be successful with their censorship, as to the extent that they are with normal Chinese population. So I guess my question is, do you foresee within the next 5 or 10 years that there might be another sort of large uprising by the Chinese people against the government, similar to what happened in 1989.
If your question is Chinese in mainland China, then it's a different case. If your question is the Chinese or Tibetans in Tibet, or like who are suppressed or ruled, occupied by Chinese, then it's a different issue. In the case of Chinese citizens in mainland China, especially in Beijing or cities like that, I think they look at the past history, how their rulers and the government had ruled their peoples. Comparing to the past histories, I think they are enjoying the highest in the terms of economics. So that's why the Chinese Communist Party or the government try to claim their legitimacy by giving economic opportunities. Right. So it is very difficult to say whether the Chinese will protest. Of course, they have a lot of, they are also suppressed and their information are censored, right? You know, Facebook is not working, Twitter is not working, they have a different version, right? And WeChat is also, they have, instead of WhatsApp, they have WeChat, they have different duplicate apps for that. But for Western regions, like those who are suppressed intensely, like Uyghur, Tibetans and Inner Mongolia, I think there will be possible of rising some protests. But China is doing their best to suppress through their censorship. Because nobody knows that 2008 protests will be so wide, which caught the international attention. Right? Nobody has predicted that. But then it happened. So it is very difficult because the Tibetan spirit has still sustained, and more Chinese are doing what I have mentioned here. Tibetans' resentment is growing every day. So unless and until the Tibetans are not happy under the Chinese control or Chinese rule or Chinese policy, I think definitely there will be tipping point one day.
Pastoral to camps.
Yeah.
And one reason that you have given is because of monitoring their movement and activities. That's the reason that you have given. Do you feel that because recently there was a song, and I was listening to that song because nowadays, if you listen to modern Tibetan songs, I feel that modern Tibetan songs are representation of what is happening in Tibet, the aspiration of Tibetan people. So it has become a kind of medium through which we can understand the real aspiration of Tibetan people. So in one such song, they were pricing. It's a kind of ode to the nomadic life, because when we really look at Tibetan way of life, Tibetan civilization started from nomad. So in that respect, do you feel that putting an end to nomadic life is not just monitoring? It could be one reason to monitor. And do you feel that nomadic life is a kind of representation of what Tibet is, what Tibetans are? A kind of a cultural symbol or cultural way of life?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with your point. What I've mentioned is a one point. Another, yes, the end of nomadic, I think nomadic is a representation of Tibetan culture. But then forcefully moving from nomadic area to the town is, I think, which is not acceptable. If they are voluntarily moving, it's a different case, right? Even if they move, they have to consult the stakeholders, local peoples. And after moving, their lands are either sold to the foreign companies or they build their own tourist infrastructures, which is not justiciable, right? But then the case is different in different areas in Tibet. Tibet is so large that one way this issue is helpful to the Tibetan in one area, and another area the same issue is not helping to the Tibetans, because we have to look into a very broad view. I think so. Thank you.
Conditions on these resettlements, like the settlements, how people live there, they have all the infrastructure, or how is it?
This is, they built their house and then they were forced to move there, and then they can keep some of animals that I've mentioned here, right? But they don't have enough space to keep all these animals. So they have 3 stores, floor or store houses, and then at the ground floor, some people, family, they used to keep their animals, and that's why during winter, in Tibet it's terribly cold, so they cannot, animal cannot sustain without having some fans place to keep there. And then one problem is the Chinese built this house with empty, nothing inside the house. Then they were certainly encouraged to participate into globalizations. One family buys fridge, another family buys TV, and then whatever Chinese produce, and Tibetans are trying to encourage to consume this. And Tibetans are encouraged certainly to participate in whatever we call it, consumerism or the globalizations, right? If they are in nomad, they don't require TV, they don't require fridge, they don't require vehicles, right? So in a way, they try to encourage more Tibetans to buy their Chinese product. So if you look at the few Tibetan cities in Tibet, there are a lot of garbage thrown everywhere, and the waste are thrown in the rivers, right? So there's I've seen one article recently, and one of my colleagues had written that, so he says there's no waste management system in Tibet, in most of the cities in Tibet. So Tibet is a very fragile ecosystems, right? For many decades, for many centuries, there were not much modern infrastructures. It is the only place that in the world which is untouched for many centuries. Now, after Chinese occupying these, they have exploiting all natural resources. They're diverting river from Tibet to northern China, because China is now facing the water shortage problem. So Tibet is origin of I think 6 major rivers and 10 trans-boundary rivers. So now China is not only damming these rivers, but also diverting the entire river towards the dry northern part of the China. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining. And I would like to present this small token of appreciation from Mr. Rinzin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.